Good morning. Our chalice lighting this morning comes from Side with Love. In times like these, our faith does not retreat, it rises. Unitarian Universalism is not a tradition that turns away from the world's pain. It is a living faith rooted in covenant and shaped by generations of activists and prophets. People who believe that revelation is ongoing, that every person carries a spark of the divine, and that giving life the shape of justice is the work of our hands and our hearts. We do not affirm the worth and dignity of every person as a slogan. We live it as a mandate. Our theology insists that love must be embodied in systems, structures, and policies that protect and uplift. In the faith of suffering and oppression, our faith responds with courage, not retreat.
And with those words, Brandon lights our chalice. Thank you, Brandon. Good morning. I'm Jeff Chard of the worship team. It is good to be together on this sunny July morning. A couple of announcements. First of all, Deborah Hagenbuck asked me to remind everyone that should you have a joy or a challenge, that's what the caring crew is for. Deborah coordinates the caring crew. And how do they reach out to you, Deborah? Via email? And how would they know? How would they know who to reach out to, Deborah?
Well, if you get it to me, I get it to them.
Okay.
Unless our whole congregation is involved, we're liable to miss someone.
Of course.
It's hard to keep track, so it's simply if you hear something.
So in other words, we talk about joys, concerns, challenges among ourselves, but we also need to get those to Deborah if we're going to share those with the entire congregation in the newsletter. Okay? Thank you all so much. Tomorrow is this walk and talk tour of the Universalist Cemetery on French Road. I've been here 45 years. I've never been there. I didn't even know about it. The Historical Society is guiding this tour. I'll be there. It's at 6 p.m. And Landmark Society, thank you so much. Who said that? Okay. Sue Lorraine will lead that tour, and that's just off Genesee Street, in fact. We're going to park in the Temple Emmanuel parking lot, the side of it towards French Road, and meet at the back of the cemetery next to the parking lot, 6 p.m. tomorrow. You won't get lost. It's a small cemetery. Okay. And I want to say that next week, church will be open. There will be a service live streaming on this screen. Miss Jean will be here with cookies and hospitality and coffee. And there will be a hybrid climate action meeting, which means some people will be in the parlor, some people will be on Zoom. So don't think just because it's Boilermaker Sunday that we're closed. We are not closed. We are open. Okay. So LGBTQ plus inclusion team meeting that may or may not be next week on Boilermaker Sunday, and it may or may not be hybrid. Steph will let you know more about that because indeed it is Boilermaker Sunday. I'm just going to take a minute here. There has been an issue about community candles, and the last couple of weeks we have streamlined the process by asking people to write out their concerns and joys so that we can read them. What do you all think of that? How many people How many people think it's okay? How many people do not think it's okay? All right, this is step one of a process that we're going to go through. We're not going to make that change without buy-in from the congregation. So today there will be our usual format where people will come up. If you can keep it to 3 sentences, that would solve this whole problem. So thank you all so much. At UU Utica, we do our best to provide opportunities for folks outside of Sunday mornings. We're fortunate as a congregation to have members and friends who live their values. So, for instance, for those who are pursuing spiritual growth, we have discussion groups like Soul Matters, Ions, A Course in Miracles. In fact, there will be an Ions-oriented service here next month in August. The pursuit of social justice is a tenet of our faith. We are fortunate to have a committed, active group of UUs who are unceasing in their efforts to make a better Mohawk Valley, a better America, a better world. We have groups in this church working to promote climate action, inclusion, racial justice, and some of our people are part of the UU Democracy in Action team. The DAT mission includes efforts to counter disinformation, to affirm the worth, dignity, and rights of all people from every background, and to defend and strengthen American democracy. All of us can be proud to be a part of a church, to support a church, to be a church that provides a home for the DAT. Today, we will hear from members of the Democracy Action Team. One of those committed individuals is our member, Beth Brotherton. Beth is the co-founder of the Mohawk Valley Mutual Aid, which has taken on the important work of helping people in the Mohawk Valley navigate social service benefits, feed themselves, feed their families, pay rent, furnish their homes. Mohawk Valley Mutual Aid is working to help area residents avoid deportation and even detention camps. This morning we are privileged to welcome Beth Brotherton to our service. Good morning, Beth.
Thank you, and thank you, Jeff. Today's opening words are from Thomas Jefferson from the Declaration of Independence, 1776. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. He has plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, burnt our towns, and destroyed the lives of our people. A prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of a free people. And now, if you would stand as you can for our hymn number 159. This is my song.
This is my song.
Forging freedom from fear, stoking the embers of 1775. Sparks ignited across the American colonies 250 years ago in 1775. While the familiar parades, barbecues, and fireworks of our traditional July 4th celebrations would become commonplace later in our history, these particular sparks were indicative not of a celebration, but of a rebellion. It was an uprising against a monarchy whose actions had grown increasingly harsh, punitive, and disconnected from the lives of the people it claimed to govern. The British Crown imposed numerous excessive and unjust taxes on goods the colonists depended upon, despite the fact that the colonists had no voice in Parliament. The Sugar Act of 1764 taxed sugar and molasses, while the Stamp Act of 1765 placed a tax on every piece of printed paper, from newspapers and legal documents to even playing cards. The subsequent Townshend Acts of 1767, which levied taxes on glass, lead, paint, and most fatefully, tea, ultimately sparked the famous Boston Tea Party of 1773. But taxation was only part of the injustice. In 1774, the British government imposed what became known as the Intolerable Acts. In retaliation for the Boston Tea Party, King George implemented the Boston Port Act, which effectively shut down the harbor, crippling the economy and punishing an entire city for the actions of a few. Not long after, he initiated the Massachusetts Government Act, abolishing the people's ability to self-govern, placing them under military control. Then came the violence. In Lexington and Concord, British troops marched to seize weapons and encountered resistance. The first shots of the revolution were fired. By August of 1775, King George declared the colonies in open rebellion, ordering a military crackdown. Now just think about this for a moment. Imagine the following. You're walking to the market, dust clinging to your shoes, the morning air heavy with tension. The shelf where your favorite beverage once sat is bare. Food staples you have always relied upon are too expensive to purchase. So with a sigh of resignation, you walk out of the store and back into the street. The ache of scarcity burns in your throat, and you turn for home, but your street no longer feels familiar and safe. Soldiers linger at corners, rifles slung casually over their shoulders, their distrustful eyes scanning, ever poised between suspicion and war. You try not to look at them too long as you pass by. At night, the silence is broken by doors crashing open, boots thundering upstairs, muffled screams, and then nothing but penetrating silence. You gather your loved ones closer and snuggle deep into your bed, hoping your meager acts of protection keep them safe from the madness outside. The next morning, you hear that a neighbor has vanished. No charges, no trial. They just disappeared. On the street, whispers spread like smoke. Someone was interrogated, deported, held in foreign prisons on charges no one understands. You want to speak up, but your words catch in your throat like thorns. The walls feel thinner and close in around you, like someone is always listening. You can't vote or protest. Every decision that impacts your life is made without you. Yet it presses down on you like a steel band tightening around your chest. You worry about your children walking to school, your partner, and your friends. You flinch at a knock on the door. The fear doesn't come all at once. It seeps in, quiet and cold, like floodwater under a closed door. You feel exposed, betrayed, and silenced. Somewhere deep inside, a quiet terror takes root and grows. The most alarming thing about this scenario is that it could have been written 250 years ago or last week. For my family, a similar scenario unfolded on a sunny morning in late May around 7:30 a.m. My husband and I had just finished breakfast and were sitting in the living room, facing the large bay window that overlooks our driveway and front yard. I was sipping the last of my coffee when I happened to glance up and saw a man in beige fatigues running toward the side of our house, presumably into the backyard. My husband, a stateless immigrant who has tried and failed for over 25 years to adjust his status in the U.S. immigration court system, quickly moved out of view of the window. Having heard countless stories of immigrants being targeted by ICE agents and disappeared, regardless of status, we had practiced for this very scenario. While one officer ran to the side gate of our backyard, another came right up to the bay window and peered inside. Seconds later, a loud pounding erupted from the front door. Because of my disability, it took me a long time to rise from my chair. As I stood, I found myself staring directly at the officer at the window as he knocked sharply, while another pounded furiously at the front door. Through the glass, I noticed one of the officers was wearing a vest with the initials ICE emblazoned across the chest. I made eye contact with the officer at the window and signaled for him to please be patient because I was moving as quickly as I could to the door. As I walked toward the door, a flood of panic thoughts crowded my mind. I was petrified. And as an autistic person, I felt moments away from sensory overload and the subsequent loss of clear thinking. But I chided myself, reminding myself that I had to be brave and focused if I was going to protect my husband. With effort, I calmed my thoughts and recalled everything I had learned from the Know Your Rights literature circulating throughout the community. I refused to open the door. Instead, I called out clearly and calmly, "Who is it?" "ICE, ma'am," the officer replied. "What do you want?" I asked. "We have a question for the gentleman who lives here," he said. "Do you have a warrant?" I asked. "Yes," he replied. "A warrant signed by a judge?" I pressed. "Yes," he affirmed. Remembering from my training that ICE very rarely has a warrant signed by a judge, and that only such a warrant gives them the right to enter a person's home, I decided to trust that knowledge. So I responded, I'm a US citizen. I know my rights, and I know you can't enter my house without a warrant signed by a judge. Silence. And then, all right, ma'am, the officer replied. And then, just like that, they left. We may no longer be colonies subjected to British rule, but many of us live under a similar kind of pressure, a similar kind of tyranny, denying due process and disregarding the rule of law. The words written in the Declaration of Independence over 200 years ago are still relevant today. Quote, he has kept among us in times of peace, standing armies without the consent of our legislators. This line, once about King George, now rings true in our current era of militarized policing, surveillance, and growing authoritarianism. One look no further than the recent occupation of Los Angeles by the National Guard. We don't know what tomorrow will bring. We live in a world shaped by uncertainty, governed in many ways by the whims of the powerful and unpredictable. It's no wonder that many of us are fearful. This brings me to something personal. I don't mind admitting that I've been struggling for a while. Struggling with my own sense of vulnerability, fear, and anger. I was taught that to be spiritual, I needed to be calm and serene and trust in the divine. I had to be grounded at all times. Feeling fear or anger meant that I was disconnected from the divine, from my higher self. But someone said something to me recently that shifted my perspective. They said, and I paraphrase, what if fear and anger can be spiritual if they lead to conviction and action? These words stayed with me, and I ruminated over them. I began thinking about Dr. Martin Luther King and his ability to transform fear into something different and productive. He took his fear and reshaped it into something unshakable. The majority of these colonists had no wealth, no coffers full of gold and jewels, no glittering thrones, but most importantly, they had each other, a shared commitment to community, and a deep conviction in the possibility of a more just and equal society, a sentiment Dr. Martin Luther King echoed in his On the Mountaintop speech over a century later. So on this 250th anniversary, I remember the colonists' bravery and courage, but also the emotions that led them from inertia and paralysis to action. So in their memory, if you would indulge me, and please repeat the following after me. I transform my anger into purpose. I convert my fear into protection for others. I transfigure my vulnerability and open a path to spiritual courage. Because, like our ancestors before us, we are not, I'm sorry. You didn't have to repeat that part. Because, like our ancestors before us, we are not powerless. And the fight for freedom, real freedom, is never just history. It's an everlasting story. Thank you. And now, if you would stand as able and open to hymn number 119, Once to Every Soul and Nation.
Good morning. It's now time for our offering. We know that our financial contributions to this congregation come from sacrifice and hard work. We are so grateful for this and commit together to ensure the funds we gather collectively do a greater good for ourselves and our world than they could have done alone. May there now be an offering to sustain and grow the life and mission of this congregation. May we all give in love and in hope. Please note that was an original composition by our own Bob Ford entitled Coming Home. And thank you, Bob, and thank you, Beth, for your powerful words and story.
Good morning. My name's Ken Drake, and I'm a social justice coordinator and a member of the Racial Justice and Democracy Action Team. As a prayer and meditation, we're going to do another congregational response. Brandon, you want to go up? That other one, thanks. Okay, the insert in your program, a full sheet. This is a July 4th meditation written by Maureen Caloran.
Spirit of life and love, I come before you black and brown and red and yellow and alabaster. I come longing for the simpler days that truly never were our lot.
And I am an American. Hear these voices as in the complexity of our days. I am humanist and Christian, Muslim and Jew, pagan and atheist and Buddhist and you.
But
I am an American.
I am one who fought for my country, and I am at the same time one who protested war.
And I am an American.
Amongst the divisions of our days, I've struggled in poverty, and I've accepted the profits of wealth.
And I am an American.
I am an owner of weapons, and I am one who would control our nation's guns by limiting the who's and what's and how's.
And
I am an American.
As light is shown on our divisions, I live with often unacknowledged privilege, and I am moved to rage at the complexity of intersecting oppressions. And I am an American.
In the challenge of our days, I am one who supports my country, right or wrong, and I'm one who claims the traditions of dissent.
And I am an American. In this polarized season, I am Democrat and I am Republican. I am libertarian and I am independent. I am green and I am confused.
And I am an American.
Spirit of hope, sit with us in our diversities. Help us hear one another in our divisions. Grant that, beginning in this community, we may honor one another's truths and know that a just and faithful tomorrow begins here in our hearts.
And I am an American. For with all our problems, with all our pain, with all our limitations and mistakes, we are Americans.
Thank you. Before we extinguish the chalice, I just would like to thank Deborah Hagenbach for volunteering to serve as a greeter this morning. Also, just a brief announcement that was brought to my attention before the service. Thursday, July 17th, from 6 to 7, Good Trouble Lives on Raleigh at Utica, 10 Broad Street at the Alexander Prime Federal Building. This is the next indivisible mass mobilization date. We're making good trouble in memory and in honor of Representative John Lewis, who died 5 years ago on this day. We will have speakers, songs, and chants and call attention to the power of the people to fight peacefully for civil rights, democracy, and social justice for everyone in this country. We will also be on Broad Street, Oneida, the site of our usual Thursday protests. But we are asking for a huge crowd to turn out. John Lewis was beaten by white supremacists and police until he nearly died, and then fought for economic justice, voting rights, and civil rights as a member of Congress. We stand up and raise our voices in his honor. Thursday, July 17th. Our church has been asked to be a sponsor for that event, and we are going to do so. All right, in your order of service, it's time to extinguish the flame. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we meet again.
And closing words is a poem, The Peace of Wild Things by Wendell Berry. When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound, in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world, and I am free. Thank you.